Welcome to the Whiskey Couch. My name is GUSTAV MULLER. It is the last day of 2017, the last day of the year, and it's time for me to reveal the Whiskey Couch Whiskey of the Year, the best whiskies that I have tasted and reviewed on our Whiskey Couch YouTube channel. And I must say I have tasted and reviewed some very good whiskies. I've tasted and reviewed some not so good whiskies. I think all in all I tasted and reviewed around 60 different whiskies. And it was not as easy as I thought to pick the best whiskey. It was quite difficult, but I enjoyed it very much and I'm excited to share the results with you. The difference between the whiskey that got the first place and the second and third whiskies were often very little, not a big difference. So the whiskies that I picked as the top whiskies is not necessarily way up there. It's often very close to the second and third place. And I've poured myself a dram to just enjoy while I do this video. And I will reveal just now what it is that I'm enjoying. At the end of the day, the question still remains, what makes a good whiskey? What makes a best whiskey? And I just realized again that personal preference plays a very big role. At the end of the day, it's a very subjective process. Some people simply prefer American bourbon whiskies. Because of the corn sweetness and the effect that the process has on how that kind of whiskey is produced. Other people prefer single malt whiskies because of the malted barley flavor profile. Others prefer, for instance, whiskies matured in ex-sherry casks because of the influence of the sherry cask on the whiskey. So personal preference plays a very big role. It's almost like relationships, you know. Certain people prefer spending time with specific kinds of people, and often choices in terms of that will surprise people around you. At the end of the day, quite subjective. I also realized that the palate influence plays a very big role. Sometimes I'll taste a whiskey and I'll say, but you know, yesterday I enjoyed this very much. Why don't I enjoy it today? And then I realized, but I had this kind of food and that kind of food, and all of that had an effect on my palate. So one should be careful to discard the effect that your palate has on your perception and your experience when enjoying a whiskey. Sláinte. I hope you're also enjoying a good whiskey. I also realized that the bottle has an effect on the whiskey. The first dram that you pour out of a bottle is simply different than the 10th, 11th, 12th dram, because by that time the bottle had time to breathe, and it all has an effect. Even the time, pouring yourself a glass of whiskey and let it stand for a while, it has an effect at the end of the day. A good rule of thumb, if a whiskey is 12 years old, just let it stand for 12 minutes to breathe a little before you taste it. At the end of the day, I'm convinced that it is every individual's personal journey and adventure to discover his or her preferred, good or best whiskey. But let me get to the winners of this year. The winners of 2017, the Whiskey Couch Whiskies of the Year. If I had to pick a winner, a best value whiskey winner, then I'm going to pick the Bain's Cape Mountain Whiskey, a single grain whiskey from South Africa. We already won a multitude of international awards, and in the review that I did on the YouTube video, I did mention that it reminds me of fresh, warm, sweet corn bread with melted butter. It's really a good whiskey, and it pairs very well with milk tart or a vanilla wafer stick or something like a custard slice. Very good. And at 250 Rand, less than £30 in the UK, it's very good value for money. My choice of blended malt 2017 is going to be Johnnie Walker, 15-year-old green label. It's smooth, it's complex, and it is very, very well integrated. I really enjoyed this blended malt or pure malt or whatever you want to call that kind of whiskey. My choice of single malt for 2017 is quite an exotic one, and it may surprise some of you, but it is the Longrow Red 13-year-old Malbec cask matured whiskey from the Springbank distillery. Longrow Red, matured in Malbec barriques from the Toren wine cellar in the Cape. Exotic aromas, exotic flavors, and it really made a lasting impression on me. And that is the one that I'm enjoying while I'm doing this video. A really, really fascinating whiskey. My Irish whiskey of the year. Irish whiskey of the year. And you can probably guess what that one is. The Redbreast 21. It's probably one of the top 5 whiskies that I have ever nosed and tasted, and just simply a best whiskey. And I invite you to watch the video that I did on this one, especially for the food pairing recommendations that I normally do with all of the videos right at the end. Go and have a look at that video, Redbreast 21, my bourbon of the year. Makers 46. I was really impressed with the effect that the extra maturation had on this Maker's Mark whiskey. Extra staves in the oak barrels, and I was quite impressed with this one, Makers 46. And then lastly, in terms of the rest of the world, my choice is going to be Kavalan Solist Vino Barrique, matured in wine barrels. I think it was from California. I was just so impressed with the effect that the wine barrels had on this particular whiskey. Kavalan Solist Vino Barrique. And that is my choice of whiskies. Personal, very subjective, for 2017. And I must say, if I look at all of these whiskies as the winners, there are some that were really very, very good that I tasted and reviewed that I think deserve to be mentioned. And I'm thinking of, for instance, the Le Chic 19-year-old Marsala cask whiskey that I tasted and reviewed. I'm thinking of the Paul John range of whiskies from India. I'm thinking of Glen Grant 18-year-old. I'm thinking of Ardbeg Kelpie, Ardbeg Anu. I'm thinking of Glenlivet First Fill Nadura. And I'm thinking of Nika Coffee Malt. Some really good whiskies. And if I think of all of these whiskies, then I really look forward to 2018 and all the whiskies that I'm going to taste and review. So I hope to see you again tomorrow on the first day of 2018 for the next whiskey tasting, whiskey review, and whiskey and food pairing. Sláinte.